Ruskin Park sits quietly between Camberwell and Denmark Hill in southeast London, a long sloping stretch of green where people walk dogs, play tennis, sit with coffee, or cut through on their way to somewhere else. Like many London parks, it has its function. It doesn't announce itself as a monument. Its name, though, carries a heavier inheritance. Ruskin Park is named after John Ruskin, a 19th century critic, writer, and social thinker whose ideas helped shape British art, architecture, politics, and education. But to understand why Ruskin's name survives not on a bookshelf, but in a place like this, I spoke to Suzanne Cooper, a scholar at the University of York and author of To See Clearly, Why Ruskin Still Matters.
So John Ruskin was a thinker, he was an artist, he was somebody I think you'd now maybe call an influencer or a disruptor. He began working in the 1840s, so he was a Victorian gentleman. He began working as an art critic, writing about contemporary art in his own day. So people like Turner, he was very excited about Turner's work and wanted to explain to people why Turner was the great hope of art in Britain. And then he turned his attention to architecture, and then gradually he recognized that art, architecture, the natural world are all connected. So he became a very important figure in the rise of what we would now call the Green Movement and the rise of the Labour movement in the early 20th century. He has one or two very key phrases, and the first one is, there is no wealth but life. Everything else is secondary, but the only wealth is in life. And so that might be our own lives or the lives of the natural world around us or the people we love. But he recognized that everything else was irrelevant apart from that. And he also says, and I think this is important now when we focus so much on the technology and on the way in which art is being manipulated and treated as something that could be made by a machine. He says the teaching of art is the teaching of all things. And if we can learn to look carefully and to make carefully, then we will have that authenticity. And it was the authenticity that he was searching for all the time, that direct connection with beauty. Ruskin grew up on the edge of London, near to what is now Crystal Palace. And he saw the Crystal Palace being built there. He saw all the tourists coming there. And he writes specifically about how that changed the rural landscape into sort of this semi-urban place where people were littering, people were destroying the trees, people were just being unaware of responsibility to the landscape. I mean, it's something that we still see today. So he was very concerned about tourism. Yes, he wanted people to have access to beautiful, safe spaces, green spaces, but he also was extremely aware that we needed to treat them, well for the next generation, for the next people coming along. So Ruskin was very keen for us to observe the natural world. He thinks that it's important to look closely. He would say, just take one stone, one pebble, and really get to know it. Turn it over in your hand, think about it, or take one small flower or one leaf. And these are things that we can't do if we're just looking through a screen or we're taking a photograph. You take a photograph of a flower and you can't get the nuance, you can't get the subtlety, you can't get the texture. But these things, if we really sit with them, if ideally he would want us to have a pencil and a piece of paper, and maybe so they could observe something that would then be lost. He knew that the natural world was, seasonal, and the blossoms will fade and your leaves will fall down. But by drawing them or sitting with them, making a note in his diary, then you can just hold on to that. And the more you look, the more closely you pay attention to the natural world, the more you then learn to care for it. You become involved in that tree that you pass every day. You feel more responsible for it. And so that good stewardship is something that he passes on to us, I think.